Hello and welcome. I am Susan McLean, and I am a professor of English here at Southwest Minnesota State University. And I'd like to welcome you to the second evening of the Marshall Festival. I will be introducing our two readers tonight, starting with my friend, mentor, and former colleague, Phil Dacey, who is the author of 13 books of poems, including, most recently, Church of the Adagio, as well as The Mystery of Max Schmitt, Poems on the Life and Work of Thomas Eakins, the New York Postcard Sonnets, and Vertebrae Rosaries, as well as Mosquito Operas, new and selected short poems. He was so disappointed at not being taught how to write poetry in form when he was at the University of Iowa Writers' Workshop that he taught himself. And then he went on to co-edit, along with Dave Joss, the pioneering anthology, Strong Measures, Contemporary American Poetry in Traditional Forms. For 35 years, he was an English professor here at SMSU, and he now lives at Lake Calhoun in Minneapolis. Please welcome Philip Dacey.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Mary Ann, too, for setting all of this up. Susan said I taught here for 35 years, and actually that's the longest I've ever lived in one place. So who says that you can't go home again, right? Because here I am, also surrounded by lots of writers. It doesn't get any better than that. And all the writers here give me a chance to bring up a subject that's kind of unpleasant. That's the farm rejection letter. But I know that I'll get a lot of sympathy from you all when I tell you that I received one not too long ago that I consider the mother of all farm rejection letters. And it goes something like, "We are sorry we cannot use the enclosed. We are returning it to you. We do not mean to imply anything by this. But we will not keep what you sent us. We did receive it though, and our returning it to you is a sign of that. It is not that we minded your sending it to us unasked. That is happening all the time. They come when we least expect them, when we forget we have needed or might yet need them, and we send them back. We send this back. It is not that we minded. At another time, there is no telling, but this time it does not suit our present needs. We wish to make it clear it was not easy receiving it. It came so encumbered, and we are busy here. We know we could not have taken it on. There's so much to do with this. We know about these things. We wait for it. We recognize it when it comes. Regretfully, this farm letter does not allow us to elaborate why we send it back. It is not that we minded. We hope this does not discourage you, but we would not want to encourage you falsely. It requires delicate handling at this end. If we had offered it to you, perhaps you would understand. But of course, we did not. You cannot know what your offering it meant to us, and we cannot tell you. There is a form we must adhere to. It is better for everyone that we use this form. As to what you do in future, we hope we have given you signs that you have read them, that you have not misread them. We wish we could be more helpful, but we are busy. We are busy returning so much. It all comes so encumbered. And there is no one here to help. Our enterprise is a small one. We are thinking of expanding. We hope you will send something. And I know him, don't send him anything. The English photographer David Bailey once said that the ugliest thing in the world is the sight of four men in a car. And when I first heard that, I sort of felt the same way, like, huh? And then I began to think about it, and then I heard this voice. We sit in the womanless car, maleness twice squared, going nowhere. Two in front and two in back in the Jill-less car. Jack, 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 and Jack. We know how ugly we are. But what can we do? We live here. The truth is, none of us can drive, though our horsepower is impressive. It may be a meeting's our goal, or a game, or something illegal, but it's all the same, the deadest end. So we tell jokes, you know the kind. Outside the car, the women walk and run and leap and make such talk as prompts their hands to fly about in ways ours, cramped inside, cannot. We don't move much. Close but not too. It's accidental when we touch. Oh, there's nothing as ugly as we. Four men in a car, not five or three. To breathe, we roll our windows down, and then we roll them up again. I think maybe Jill deserves some equal time after that. And there's a story about Jill that I've heard that her voice, and you should know this, sounded like a bad imitation of Mae West. He had this idea about the hill, how at the top there would be water, sweeter than any in any pail lugged previously. And to come down would be the easiest part of all. I told him it was a kid story. Before I had breasts, that story was making the rounds in my gang. Hell, we laughed at it even then. We all knew better than to think sweet water could be had for the price of a pail and a little legwork up and down a hill that had been standing there dawn to dreary dawn a whole life story long, not to mention the probability such a thing as sweet water, hill or no hill, didn't exist. I'll give him credit for this, though. A wall couldn't have been more stubborn. He'd call me late at night even to break down my resistance. Okay, I said, I'll go. The truth is, he was cute. Starry-eyed, but cute. And I wondered whether he had anything in his pants. Pale dawn found us taking turns with the pail as we rose above the town. Jack said, not all the money down there beats the water we'll find. Now, I was poor, down to a few bucks. It's no mystery. Money talks loud. But I climbed the hill to the top, and there was this big hole and deep. I got dizzy to look down it. Jack had rope and let the pail fall yards and yards. Got something, he yelled, pulling the catch in. Later, the story he told back in town was the water spilled out. The fact of the matter is, I saw what he had. Nothing. Damn if he didn't claim different, though, always. Damn, too, if those pants weren't full. I've got these kids to prove that story. When they whine, I tell them, climb a hill. Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, spoke about the shadow side of the human being. And I wondered whether sports, some kind of sports, could have a shadow side too. For example, could there be a sport named mystery baseball? Weird music. No one knows the man who throws out the season's first ball. His name has never appeared in the newspapers, except in crowd scenes, blurred. His face has never appeared in the newspapers, except in crowd scenes, blurred. Asked his name, he mumbles something about loneliness, about the beginnings of hard times. Each team feels an extra 10th man. This is the invisible player assigned to no particular position. Runners edging off base feel a tap on their shoulders. Turn, see no one. Or the batter, the count against him, will hear whispered in his ear vague, dark rumors of his wife and go down. Vendors move through the stands selling unmarked sacks, never disclosing their contents, never having been told. People buy, hoping. Pitchers stay busy getting signs. They are everywhere. One man rounds third base, pumping hard, and is never seen again. Teammates and relatives wait years at the plate, uneasy, fearful. An outfielder goes for the ball on the warning track. He leaps into the air and keeps rising beyond himself, past the limp flag. Days later, he is discovered, descended, wandering dazed in center field. Deep under second base lives an old man, bearded, said to be 100. All through the game, players pull at the bills of their caps, acknowledging him. And I'd like to acknowledge my brother, Owen. You may have seen him on TV, the St. Louis traffic cop who dances as he works. Candid camera had him doing it to music. Baryshnikov in blue, all big city style and jazzy moves. Years before my brother was on that corner had written the book on gridlock. Nearby factories and trains and freeway entrances and exits had tied travelers and city planners in knots. $1 million set of lights installed in place of one patrolman under siege fizzled, followed by another try at manpower. This time, 3 policemen strategically placed the coroner's own Bermuda Triangle. Not many problems disappeared in there. And soon, the technocrats threw up their hands and let the 3, my brother, one of them, sink or swim in that sea of honking cars. They swam and sank, and swam and sank, until one fateful day, both of my brother's partners called in sick. The station chief, fed up, said, "Put Dacey out there by himself and see what he can do," expecting nothing, which was what he got. No jam, no backup, no cursing drivers, only autos moving slick as skaters on new ice. Sweet perpetual motion, thanks to my brother's bumps and grinds, his arms now windmill blades, now darting rapiers. He never stopped, so why should the traffic? It was as if he'd been waiting all his life for just that moment. Backstage, as it were, the old star finally ill and the new star born. You've got to understand, his life till then, it had their problems, like too many wives. I always forget that 4th one's name. But now he'd come into his own, local celebrity, TV channels featured him as the evening's good news. And soon, not so local, a California film crew documented him in Pop Cop. You can see it on YouTube. And folks from near and far made him the victim of his own success by driving there to watch. Free entertainment, thus creating more traffic, which he handled with his usual purposeful show, and sometimes with a "move it, buddy." Sometimes he made them go away. They did not want to go, but they did flow. Businesses threw banquets for him, and more than one driver's left hand shot out to pat him on the back. "Good job there, Dace." And though art meant for him, Glenn Miller, period, to see him work, you'd think there had to be a muse of traffic cops. But what he did was more dangerous than art. As brave bullfighters worked close to the horns, my brother worked close to the cars, and twice was knocked flying into the hospital. Flowers from stranded drivers filled his room. And when he returned, their horns blared welcome his entire rush hour shift. The Rock was back. Mid-channel, the river swirling happily and noisily around him. When he retired, they redesigned the streets. I like to think that since my brother didn't have some athlete's numbered jersey to hang up in Shrine, for him, they hung up several city blocks. So that was his challenging job. The worst job I ever had was nailing Jesus' feet to the cross on the assembly line at the crucifix factory. Jesus. I'd never thought of myself as religious before that. But when I had to hammer those nails, I figured it up once, more than 2,000 times a day, my mind began seeing things. Little tremors along his skin, jerks of those legs that were bonier than models' legs, his eyes imploring, forgiving. I swear, if a tiny drop of blood had oozed out of that wood at my pounding, I wouldn't have minded at all. I was ripe for a miracle or a vacation. But all I got was worse. With each blow of that hammer, I flinched, as if I were the one getting pierced. Doing that job day after day was bad enough, but doing it to myself, my arms spread out from one end of my paycheck to the other, was crazy. I began to sweat constantly, though the place was air-conditioned. It wasn't long before the foreman took me aside and told me I was taking my job too seriously. And if I wanted to keep it, I had better calm down. He was right. I pulled myself together like a man and put all pointless thoughts out of my head. Or tried to. It wasn't easy. Imagine Jesus after Jesus coming down at you along that line, and you with your hammer poised, you knowing what you have to do to make a living. One more job. I was proud of the Coca-Cola stitched in red on the pocket of my dad's shirt. Coca-Cola was America, and my dad drove its truck. I love the way the letters curved like handwriting, something personal, a friendly offer of a drink to those in need. Bring me your poor, you're thirsty. And on every road I went, faces under the sign of Coke smiled down out of billboards at me. We were all brothers and sisters in the family of man, our bottles to our lips, tipping our heads back to the sun. My dad lifted me up when he came home, his arms strong from stacking case after case of Coke all day. A couple of cold ones always waited for us in the kitchen. I believed our president and my dad were partners. My dad said, someday Coke would be sold in every country in the world. And when that happened, there would be no more wars. Who can imagine, he asked, two people fighting while they swig their Cokes? I couldn't. And each night I thanked God for my favorite drink. When I did, I imagined him tilting a bottle up to his heavenly lips, a little Coke dribbling down that great white beard. And sometimes I even thought of his son on the cross, getting vinegar, but wanting Coke. I knew that if I had been there, I would have handed a Coke up to him, would have figured out how to take it, even though his hands were nailed down good, because he was God. And I'd have said when he took it, "That's from America, Jesus. I hope you like it." And then I'd have watched amidst the thunder and lightning on that terrible hill, Jesus' Adam's apple bob up and down as he drained that bottle in one long divine swallow like a sweaty player at a sandlot game between innings, the crucial ninth coming up next. And then the dark, sweet flood of American sleep, sticky and full of tiny bubbles, would pour over me. Plus, there was a man who was traveling overseas, and he knew the language enough to encourage him to try to translate whatever he heard going on around him, but he didn't know it well enough to do it accurately. So he goes into a movie theater, and as he's watching a movie in a foreign language without subtitles, he has a revelation, and he thinks, this is the way it has always been. Someone speaks and you know you will never understand. A man shoots another man and talks as he does. Could he have said, we are all dying loaves of bread? Or the woman who opens her blouse revealing a scar on her breast, to the man who stares, you hear her say, yes, there are rivers in the moon, jelly. For years now, you have starred in your own foreign movie. Once at breakfast, when the sun through the kitchen window was a director's dream, your wife said, you know, I love you. It was the strangest language you had ever heard. You passed her the salt. Or the children run to the door to greet you, chanting, Daddy's home, Daddy's home. Your eyes fill with tears, surely out of frustration. When will they learn to speak the tongue of men? So you eat popcorn, heavily buttered, and watch the inexplicable goings on. A car hurtles off a cliff. The sun rises. Leaving the theater, someone bumps into you. He says, savages have eaten the moon. You say, you're welcome, and smile. It is always good to meet someone from home. And as long as we're traveling, let's go to Hawaii, to Maui, to the Pioneer Inn, which has on its walls my favorite sign in the whole world. It says, women is not allow in you room. If you burn you bed, you going out. Only on Sunday you can sleep all day. And I never want that sign to end. I want it to just kind of keep on going in some way. Like, keep you trouble to yourself. We no want more than that we got. We call police if you money is hot. If feel lonely, go on street, make good time. No sit in room for a weep, and call her name. If feel good, keep down you singing. We got all work to do, no time for happy fooling. You pay before you sleep. You no sleep, we keep you money. If don't you like is tough. When hot go cold the water, blow on it or do without. Be glad you got what you got. Follow rules or we go bust you head. In room, no sails, and keep you shoes off bed. Once upon a time, there was a man and wife, husband and wife, visiting her parents, and it was bedtime. And the wife said to the husband, "Let's do it quietly tonight. My mom and dad aren't asleep yet." And the husband said to the wife, "Let the spring squeak. Let the whole world hear the spring squeak. Let that squeaking be the new music of the heavenly spheres. Let no one oil the squeaking springs. Let all springs always everywhere be rusty or tight and squeak, squeak. Let anyone under this roof who hears a squeak and can't stand it live on top of the roof. Let the weather up there teach that lover of quiet how to squeak. Let the silence when the squeaking springs stop be like the first eclipse to the first man and woman on earth. Let the only acceptable response to one squeak be another. And let the night be filled with a chorus of squeaks, like the anthem of frogs in a pond, fat up to their necks in muck, and happy to be there as the stars squeak their way across the sky." Walt Whitman said that death is different from what anyone supposes and luckier. I've never been convinced of that completely, but I do believe that if we could see our lives from the vantage point of death, we'd see them differently from the way we do when we're living them. For example, I'm in the place, neither hot nor cold, neither light nor dark, after death, a no place. And someone comes and says, because death's daughter is getting married, everyone gets an hour in some yes place. And mine is back in the ice cream novelty factory I lasted at less than a day in my teens. But now I am happy to be there, even though I am reliving the worst hour on the assembly line. The assembly line speeds up and I snap cardboard cartons into shape and put ice cream bars in them, and the foreman is watching and scowling. So that when I notice the cuticle on my left thumb has been sliced by the thin cardboard and drops of blood are falling on to the assembly line as I work, I dare not say anything or break my rhythm, but just keep working faster and faster, further wounding the cuticle, from which greater drops splat onto the relentless line until the foreman erupts, shouting about some fudgesicles going down the line with, "What in the hell? Can that be blood on them?" and follows the red trail back to my busy hand and me, whom he tells to get off of his line and out of his sight forever. But this time, because I am dead, because I have only 20 minutes left, I do not guiltily acquiesce the way I did before, but instead just stand there and tell him how beautiful the blood-stained fudgesicles are, picking one up and beginning to eat it as I speak, telling him also he is beautiful, particularly his shouting, which is like an outburst of passion in an opera, that even a flimsy cardboard container feels like love in the hands. And the conveyor belt, that endless tongue, whispers a prophecy about my co-workers on the line, high school dropouts at various ages and colors, how their lives are melting away. And he, the foreman, should grieve and give them bonuses and raises. But by this time now, he is sounding like an entire orchestra in a pit. And I have gathered up an armful of bloody fudgesicles, which would only have been thrown away anyway, but which I mean to carry across the border into the other world. When suddenly I stun everyone in that room by evanescing in a way, by not going out the door he points me toward, but by evanescing in a way they have seen only in certain movies. Flesh to vapor to nothing. And as I do, I hope the nothing I am carrying melts in transit so that I can live forever in death by licking a souvenir from my holiday. A nice, sweet, cold dessert with the mark of seriousness on it. My life so handily upon a stick. And a friend of mine wrote me a while ago and she said, how do you spell the word doozy? Is it D-O-O-Z-I-E or is it D-O-O-Z-E-Y? And I said, it's D-O-O-Z-Y. It's doozy in the dictionary and doozy in my heart and doozy up and down the street. It's doozy where the daisies roam and dizzy where the lovers doze and daze or lazy. It's doozy where it's Dacey and acey doosey, upsy daisy, dipsy doodle when it's crazy, but doozy all the time. It's doozy any way you spell it, but dicey if you try to sell it. It's doozy any way you slice it. With doozy, you don't have to spice it up. So doozy this and doozy that, and keep your doozy hot, and let your doozy out when it wants out. For hunky-dory, intro ebo ad altari dei, makes a fellow woozy. Onesie, twosie, does he, does she, yes they doozy. To the tune of Tommy Dorsey, William Basie, any bluesy band. So tell your Susie, there's no time for choosy, and it's all good newsy. Till the boozy, blousy, easy, jazzy, doozy, end. Thank you.